There's a time the police whipped Honorable Nabila and I said, but this cannot happen. And somebody must raise it up. And in order to give it the credibility it deserved, it shouldn't be a member of the opposition. It should be a member of parliament raising this matter as concern. So members of parliament have reduced parliament to a bipartisan organization where they have chosen to use parliament for political contestation. Parliament is not supposed to be necessary for political contestation, but is supposed to be helping running government.
Honorable, isn't it just also an area where you're settling your political
checking on the excesses of government, and also talking to one another behind the scenes in order to agree on what works. Because that's one of the areas that has severely been dented. Honorable Semiju, you remember at a time when we had Professor Latigo as the leader of the opposition and Professor Sibambi as the leader of government business. Every morning before the Prime Minister, the leader of government business came to Parliament, he would seek out his colleague on the other side to find out if there are any burning issues that they would talk about, so that by the time they come on the floor, there is concurrence on the urgency of the matters. But right now, if you make Parliament an area for political contestation, then you lose the value and the intention for which the institution is supposed to be. For instance, I looked at this issue of the priest in Masaka. Even when it was important that somebody raises it, did it have to be a member of the opposition so that that issue is reduced as if the priest represents the opposition? This was a priest in Uganda who had been incarcerated. I would have been happier if a member of parliament from the National Resistance Movement came up on the floor of the House to seek from the institutions of government, find out is it true he was arrested, and if so, by what institution, and if he has been arrested, then you give the assurances, as the Attorney General did, to say we are going to follow up the matter to ensure that if he must appear in the courts of law, he should, and if there is anybody who vitiated the law in doing this, somebody must be punished.
Even with that kind of commitment.
So this is the parliament I expect, not a parliament where you think when Honorable Semju Nganda is whipped, and because he's in the opposition party, that it is good riddance, so Honorable Semju must be beaten. This is not the parliament that we must have. I want to appeal to my brother Honorable Semju, when you go back to parliament, teach them the way we used to, you know how we used to relate. Behind the scenes, let me tell you, let me now confide here, there is a minister who died when we were in parliament and we were fighting against privatization, especially of the UCB. There was a government minister who would bring us information from cabinet and say, but this is what cabinet decided, but for us we are not supportive of this, but we need members of parliament who will help us raise up these matters on the floor. And we would discuss them, and when it became contentious, the president would invite us as members of the caucus so that we privately talk about some of these matters. So constructive engagement has deteriorated in the parliament of Uganda, and because of that, justice has suffered. The delivery of service as a parliament also gets compromised. And then finally, even the people knowing what they are supposed to do becomes a problem.
At the time so disparative that people cannot behave the way you behave while you're in the House, that people cannot have consensus even with the opposition, or they cannot be at a position to speak together to have a solution. I mean, on instances like that, there are times it can be remembered very well when the Prime Minister herself said one individual of NUP was a terrorist. Up to today, he has not been seen. Everybody continues to be comfortable with that. Can't you sit with?
If you can allow me, I think
yes or no?
Dombo is more intelligent than the submission he is making, but convenient he is doing so. Because I know Dombo. The parliament has become a cover for Dombo. Because he can't blame Museveni, he can't blame cabinet, he cannot blame anyone. So even when you are making an argument about the militarization of our lives, Dombo will immediately run to parliament, which has become very convenient for him. Courts of law in the case of the Kenyan citizens abducted because they had come to campaign for Bobi Wine. courts issued an order for government to bring them. They said, we don't have them. Later, President Museveni says they were in a fridge, now we have released them. This parliament that you are blaming, summoned Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the CDF, and he said they cannot appear before those crowns. If anything, they should come crawling before me, and I'm even going to arrest them. He even organized a demonstration against Parliament, a CDF. Dombo, don't argue like you have been away. In your times in Parliament, you remember when you formed the PAFU, and you're not the ones who were. I one time spoke to the Honorable Amanya Mushega. People who you can consider to be Museveni's contemporary, people who were with him in Ruwero, had even started a forum to discuss critical issues away from the formal institutions. One time they had a meeting at Parliament, and they asked the former Vice President, especially Wandera Kaziwe, to chair them. They said, we need someone who is not part of us to chair this meeting. And Museveni stormed the meeting. He said, why are you excluding me? What is killing Uganda is that the influence outside the formal institution has died. For you and group, from the Young Parliamentary Association to the Parliamentary Advocacy Forum, which you are heading, the idea was that you can't do these things, all the things, under a formal environment. You need to reach out to each other outside. That you have killed. Killed it in a way, sometimes because of the caliber of the people that you bring. I cannot imagine that. I visited Ruhakana Ruguna many times when he was the Prime Minister, and it was okay. I think if I went to visit Nabanya, she would run away that the opposition is coming to my office. Even the caliber of people that you have matter a lot. If you want to have a discussion with NRM, just tell me in that cabinet today, who would you summon out for a discussion? Even in the military, maybe in the past it would be easy to go and have a discussion with Muntu, with Tumukuna and others. People would, even in formal military meetings, go and disagree with Museveni. So the constitution has been overthrown. Stop blaming Parliament. That courts of law issue orders. Please, these Kenyans you have arrested must be brought. They issue orders. Some Mugumia who you have disappeared must be brought. And the military says, we don't have them. Later on, they say, we now have them. The law says, if you arrest a citizen, within 48 hours, that citizen must be produced before courts of law. And the military issues a statement that we have a priest for more than 3 weeks. Nothing happened. It's not been brought. I want us to deal with that. Don't run away from the responsibility of dealing with the problem. Stop picking people to blame. Even if Parliament was functional, Parliament cannot go and remove prisoners from a basement run by Museveni and his son. Parliament cannot go and retrieve Mugumia from the military detention. The moment the military takes over management of society, it means all these other institutions cannot work. And Dombo, I know you are intelligent, you may pretend here, but you know the problem. You can blame Parliament 100 times. I'm not saying Parliament is perfect. It's one of those institutions that also exist now in a name like a courts of law. Let's deal with the problem. We've been taken over, the military has captured.
I think Honorable Semujunganda has pleaded guilty because if General Muhoozi calls Parliament clowns, do they have to prove so by doing exactly that? Because they have a constitutional mandate and they are paid to do so. They are supposed to call the minister to make an explanation. They are supposed to invite, Parliament can invite the president. The only concession the president did when he was in Parliament was that the committees of Parliament, when they wanted to interview him, you know, with the investigations that we did in Parliament and the president wanted to testify, the committees had to go to Parliament. Members of Parliament of the opposition at that time even tried to fight against that. But we have to find a compromise position where we'll give an opportunity to the head of state, who was privy to information, to make a submission to the committee, although the argument by then by members of the opposition was that getting to State House, members of the committee will be compromised, or they will not take the full account of what the president states, or they cannot guarantee that the information the president gives will be reflected in the report as it was. Even when they were done.